not, I'm going to dive in right now. Let's just share the screen. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
We're good? All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Thanks, everyone, for the opportunity to deliver a subject that I am quite passionate about. You know, a lot of people, when they describe me, I'm sure they use a lot of adjectives, but one I think that they would often use is that he's an organized guy. And I do plead guilty to that accusation, but I don't really think that I'm an organized person by nature. And in fact, I count one of my blessings as having realized early in life that I wasn't particularly organized, and that I recognized the importance of acquiring and mastering these skills to further myself along my career and to maybe reduce the stress in my life that much more. And what further has ignited my passion to share these skills with you is that I've seen many people who were very talented, had everything going for them, but because of a lack of organizational skills, they were limited in reaching their life's ambition. And that's why I'm really excited to share a number of these skills and mindsets with you today. Because getting organized will help you to be where you want to be, quite simply. What we're going to cover today is, first of all, just a little bit about setting your stage for success. It's more about mindset and environment. And then I'm going to go over the 4 Ds of effective organization, followed by a few success stories, 4 of them to be precise. And then I'll be happy to answer any questions or field any comments. First question I have for you is, which image captures your work or home or internal environment? Is it serene and peaceful, or is it polluted and chaotic? Obviously, if this is the world in which you operate, your ability to move forward and achieve your goals is going to be hamstrung. And one way to get out of that is to master the 4 Ds of effective organization, as well as not just understanding what they are, but when and how to use each. So we're going to go through what these 4 are. The first one is to do. This is perhaps the one with which we're most familiar. You see a task, you perform it. Many people are preoccupied with this, which means that they're often harried, out of control, and always feel like they're playing catch up. The next D is to delegate. I would suspect that this might be the one D that most people have the greatest challenge for a number of reasons, and we'll go through those reasons and the solutions shortly. But this is essentially finding someone else or some other means for accomplishing a task other than yourself. The next D of the 4 Ds is to defer. This is the decision of whether something needs to actually be done now or be done later. Many of us are masters at this because many of us basically equate deferring with procrastinating. And this is not a good place to be either all the time, but it is an important skill to master, that is knowing when to defer. And then the final D of the 4 Ds is to discard. And there are some people who have a really hard time with this. In fact, entire television shows have been created around this subject. You may have heard of one of them called Hoarders. I think a nice little rule of thumb is to always be able to determine what the color of your desktop is. And maybe even furthermore, to commit to having a stack of papers, only one stack of papers, and never allow it to get more than, say, 1 or 2 centimeters high. Because if you don't get to it by then, it's probably not very important. But in a very important distinction to determine how to utilize these 4 Ds is to understand the distinction between what's important and what's urgent. Now, something's important when it's marked by or indicative of significant worth or consequence, something that's valuable in content or relationship. Something is urgent when it calls for immediate action or attention, a pressing matter. What I like to do is present this little table that I think, pretty simply but powerfully presents how to decide when to do, when to delegate, when to defer, and when to discard. If something is important and urgent, it needs to be done, either by you or somebody else. If it's not urgent, but it's important, that's something that should be deferred, either for someone else to do or for you to do. And if it's not important and it's not urgent, you should discard it. Now, in terms of harnessing the power of deferring and discarding, two resources that should be in everybody's arsenal are a scanner and a shredder. And a paperless office is a wonderful experience. Now, I know there are organized people, they have organized messes. Personally, I don't function well when I'm in a chaotic environment. And so my desk is clear right now, except for a couple of notes that had to do with this lecture, actually. And I make liberal use of in fact, today, Virginia pointed out that it was time to empty my shredder because it is no longer accepting applicants because it is full. But you might have noticed that we haven't really distinguished between, well, how do I know when to do and when to delegate? You've shown me that if it's urgent and important, it needs to be done now, but who's supposed to do it? So I've got another task for you, or another table that can help you with that, to decide when to do and when to delegate. Now, basically, it's this. Consider what your top strength is. And if your top strength, if the task involves you deploying your top strength, which means it is the thing that earns you the most money or you derive the greatest satisfaction, and there's no other resource available to perform it for you, then that's pretty much straightforward. That's something that you should do. If it's not your top strength and you do have a resource available, then you should delegate it. And then, which is the case for many of us, if it's not your top strength but you don't have a resource available, then unfortunately you need to do it. And that's the one that you're probably going to procrastinate on the most. So I would get into the habit of getting the ones that you're not happy doing done first, and just ticking them off your list. It's very gratifying when you do that. And now let's talk about effective delegation. And for me, it's all about a feedback loop, a closed feedback loop, so that essentially I say this not in a negative way, but when you ask someone to do something, your system should be structured that you have a feedback loop, which means that if it doesn't get done, you're not surprised or disappointed. So basically, you go in assuming, until proven otherwise, that the task that you've delegated is not going to be done. And then you have a backup or a plan B for it. And so to introduce this concept, I have a fictitious assistant here by the name of Mr. So-and-so. And I'm going to show you one of my tools, which is my task, my calendar and contact manager. And you can see there's an alarm here which says that for Hugh so-and-so, he is supposed to deliver a competitive analysis for me by the 11th. All right, so I had it as an alarm, and it's not the 11th yet, so I'll just put it off another day, which means that even though I'm not getting to him right now, it won't fall through the cracks. The reason I need that competitive analysis from Hugh so-and-so is that at 2 o'clock on Friday, I'm going to be presenting a presentation to a prospective client. Now, Hugh hasn't demonstrated his ability to deliver on time to me yet. He's a new fictitious employee. And that's why on my calendar on the 11th, I have a reminder for 2 p.m. the day before to remind me to check on the status of that delegated task. Okay, so that's how I close the feedback loop. Now, another really important tool in your toolkit for effective and efficient management of tasks is to have a directory structure. Now, most of you have a computer. Some of them are Macs. Some of them aren't. But the logic is really pretty much the same. Most directories have a root structure. It's on Windows, it's a C drive, and that's the root of your tree, basically. And what I do is I create subfolders for every major topic or task that I need to perform. I have a folder that's called vendor correspondence. I have one that's client correspondence. And then within each of these, I have, for instance, for vendors, I have Comcast, American Express, and probably 150 other subfolders. This means that when I get something in an inbox or I get a document that I scan, yeah, it's great to have a scanner, but where do you put the document? Well, if you have a logical structure like this, you know where to put it, and then you can confidently shred it. You don't need the paper because you know where it is. And real world, for me, this is more what my true directory structure looks like. From the root, I have a section which I've alphabetized. I put A's because I always wanted alphabetized at the top. This is where I manage orders. This is where I manage projects. This is where I have a list of various services that comprise my product line. So there would be a subfolder for each service that I offer. And then I have marketing slicks here. Articles, here's my business-to-business correspondence, my client correspondence, client for a cause, prospect correspondence, standard operating procedures, tasks related to my speaking, and travel and events folder. So when I get something that has to do with business-to-business, I just go into that folder and save it in the appropriate subfolder, unless it doesn't exist, in which case I'll create a new subfolder. Now, here's some examples of how being organized can not only save you time, but also money. I had a legal question about 2 weeks ago, and I didn't want to pay for an attorney, so I went online and found a group called Just Answer. Please ignore that typo. And I went in and created their deal was you could get an answer to a question for only $5. And in a week, you were automatically enrolled in their service, which was $60 a month. That's not a bad deal, but if I didn't need the service any longer, I really didn't want to be stuck paying $60 a month. I think that's how a lot of these companies make a lot of money, because a lot of people aren't organized sufficiently to set up the reminder to cancel the automatically renewing subscription. And consequently, they end up paying money until they finally figure out how to cancel their subscription. What I did was I immediately created the record, and I set a reminder for myself on the 25th, right down here, to cancel if not happy or not using, is what I should have really said. And then in I also made a note that I created a folder in my directory under business to business called Just Answer. So when I was triggered, when I was reminded, as I am here, to cancel the membership today, I was reminded that I actually had set up a folder with instructions on how to cancel it. All I did was, when I got this reminder, I went into the folder, I followed the directions, and I canceled my subscription. And that's, again, an example of that feedback loop where the person I wanted to make sure didn't disappoint me in canceling was myself. So I set up a reminder for myself. Now, here's an example of a friend of mine who went on a weight loss journey just very recently, actually. Just trying to find there it is. And another great resource to use is Excel or some other spreadsheet, because when you begin a task with the end in mind, it helps keep you motivated toward your success. So here's a worksheet that I set up for my friend Ken. And then he had to fill it out, but this is basically his food, his consumption log, and his weight loss diary. So he had a starting weight of 220 pounds on the 4th of February. And this is every day where he logs what he ate.
Scary.
All which is within his plan. And then over here is his weight loss. He started at 219.8 pounds, and then he does a weekly weigh-in. And he sees he lost 8.8 pounds the first week, 3.6 the next. He's on actually, Thursday will be his 4th week, but right now he's lost an average of 5 pounds a week. He's at 200 pounds. He hasn't been at 200 pounds in 35 years. He's very excited, and he can't wait, because in the next 3 weeks, he's probably going to be at his target weight. Oops.
I've almost lost 40. Wow. Wow, that's a lot.
All right, another example of an event another example of, let's see, here we go, of how to harness these management skills to get where you want to be is every year we do a Climb for a Cause event. Last year was our 22nd annual. It was obviously abridged somewhat owing to the pandemic, but we still pulled it off. And this is kind of shows the success of what we did. Just thought I'd share some cool picture with you of the hike that was done in Wenatchee, Washington. But we begin with the end in mind, which is a successful event. And again, I rely heavily on checklists and spreadsheets. If you want to organize an event, then you have to solicit the involvement of many people. That means you have to confirm what tasks you want to accomplish and when. You need to create and assign committees and then schedule kickoff and follow-up meetings so that you can continue to have that feedback loop. You know, people agreed that they would have something done by a certain date. You need to confirm that it's been done. And here's just a list. You know, people sometimes are daunted by having a successful event, but really a successful event is a fairly simple matter. It really requires that you, A, get people to the event, and B, make sure they're having a good time at the event. And if you want it to be an ongoing event, like an annual, then you need to have a pre and a post promotion plan so that you're already promoting next year's event during this year's event. So this is just a list of tasks that need to be assigned to various committees. And you want to establish those committees based on tasks and milestones. You have a pre-event committee, which is basically a promotional committee to set up the event, where it's going to be, when it's going to be, what the theme is going to be. And then you have an event committee, and then you have a post-event committee. Now, another example of how you can utilize worksheets to achieve your goal is I rely heavily on them for my mountaineering expeditions. And you want to make some decisions in advance if you're going to embark on any such event. Are you going to do it by yourself or with a team? It's safer and more fun to do it with a team, I'll tell you that. What are your travel and logistics requirements? What kind of a training program, and what's your budget? And so to visualize your objective, nice to have a picture like this. This is Mount McKinley, which was an objective that we accomplished several years ago, tallest peak in North America. Oops, Mary just wants to be admitted. Okay. And I use 3 different spreadsheets to track an event like this. One of which is, well, what is my rate of altitude gain going to be? Because if I climb too high too fast, I can get into a lot of trouble physiologically. And so many months in advance, we put together a sheet of, well, on day X, what altitude are we going to be at, and what's our cumulative altitude gain? And this is our plan. And we always pad this with extra days because you can't always control the weather, or you can have lost equipment, which is what happened to me on this event. But because we packed in extra days, we were still able to accomplish our goal. Another spreadsheet I used is my endurance and fitness training, where I set up my goals for the year. And essentially, these are the summary of my workout time. I had planned to work out 550 hours, and I actually exceeded that by 4 hours. And my road bike distance, I was short by about 65 miles. My paddle distance, I was almost spot on. I was off by 5 miles. My biking distance was a little light, but almost on point, on target. I exceeded my my ski distance goal, and basically every day I tracked it, all the way up to January 1st. My workout time, what event I did, and what the cumulative time was. And it's very gratifying when you can, go in here. And I was also tracking my alcohol consumption, as you could see, which I did cut back significantly as the event approached. And then finally, I have a gear and a task tracker. Excel is being lazy today. Now let me block this out. for each, so I had a gear list, which is rather lengthy, as you can see. And I use it to not only know what I need to pack, but track whether I packed it and whether I used it or not. And that's how you get efficient, because the less stuff you bring, the lighter your packs, and the more likely you are to reach your goal. But everything from passport to travel wallet to GoPro, all kinds of clothing, hardware. I even tracked the repair kit, power supply. I think I have my caloric requirements here. So everything's planned in advance, but it's all put on paper, so nothing is left to chance. Trust me, enough things will go wrong that you want to plan for everything that you can. And we're stuck. There we go. Well, this is me standing at the top of Mount McKinley, which was a very gratifying experience indeed. That's a view from the top down the Kahiltna Glacier that we hiked up. And essentially what I'd like you to do now is to think about the skills. Hopefully and I don't know anything about, I don't know everything about any of you. You know, some of you are possibly better organized than I am, and some of you may have some challenges. My goal here today is to give you some skills to add to your toolbox, and then you can plug in whatever goal you have in mind, visualize that goal, and then work toward achieving it. I realize this isn't the sexiest subject in the world, but hopefully what I've shared with you today gives you an appreciation for the power and potential that being organized can have to help you to achieve your life's ambition. It's not the thing itself, but it is the thing that gets you to your thing. And that's why I think it's so powerful, and I hope you'll embrace what I shared with you today. I am very passionate about this subject. I invite any of you to reach out to me. I'm at your disposal if you want assistance in any respect. And at this time, I'm open to any questions or comments that you have, but thank you for your kind attention.
What software do you use for that organizing thing where you showed like where you showed like clients what you're doing that day and like and all that?
Yep.
What's the
The
name of the
contact
software?
manager I use, Peter, is called ACT. And it's not cloud-based, and that's one of the reasons I use it. It's free. I mean, I paid for it. Occasionally, I need a little bit of support, but it's an extremely powerful tool because I can just on the fly set up an agenda in there. I can set up contacts, set up that feedback loop. But there are other great programs out there. The logic is the same. You just need to, distinguish between what's urgent, what's important. Decide whether to do, defer, discard, or delegate, and have the reminders. I like to use the calendar for my tasks, actually. That way, because for me, out of sight is out of mind. So I may not get to every task on my calendar in the day, but nothing falls through the cracks, because if I don't get to it, I just move it to another day. Thanks for the question. Anybody else?
Danny, I run into particular difficulty with emails, and I have folders set up. The problem arises when a sender is covering more than one topic. So my folders are typically set up by topic, but there are multiple topics. And this could happen with documents as well as emails, but do you have any suggestions when there are multiple topics making it difficult to place?
I do. That's a great question. I think what often happens is it's sort of scope creep within an email thread. Somebody will reach out and you might say, hey, Danny, regarding your workshop. And then I'll answer your question and I'll say, but I'll reply and the subject I won't change the subject. It'll say regarding your workshop. And I'll say, hey, when you're heading up north, maybe we can do some fishing. And then I've changed the subject, but I haven't changed the subject line. So one thing that I suggest is when that happens, go ahead and erase the subject and replace it with the subject that speaks to the subject matter.
Cool.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, it really helps. 'Cause so many people use their inbox as their file cabinet, and it becomes basically a garbage can. When I get an email, I really, mine piles up over time as well, but then I clean it out once a month or so. But I'll look at an email and my first question is, where shall I put this? Do I want to discard it, defer it, delegate it, or do it? And if it's important but not urgent, I'll save it into the folder, and then I'll go into my calendar and I'll set a reminder for myself to perform the task, and I will attach that email to that task. Within ACT, and I'm sure within other things, you can attach a document. And because I know where I put it, because I have this directory structure, I just go into business to business, Blatchford Solutions, follow up on telephone skills curriculum. And there it is. So I don't even have to spend a lot of time filling in the details. It's just there. Just click on the link to the attachment and I'm off to the races.
You can attach an email as a document?
Yes, you can. What I do is I save the email. I save it in the subfolder of the client, the prospect, the business contact. And then, as I just said, at least in ACT, you know what, I could take back the screen and show you what I do. If somebody, let me share my screen again. Here, for instance, this isn't an email, but on the 12th, not the 13th, the 12th, I'm going to be giving a presentation to Don Johnson in Northwest Snoring Center, okay? And when the appointment comes around, first of all, I have a reminder. I'll set it to an hour because I don't need to know the day before. If I go to details, I didn't attach it. And I go down here, I can demonstrate. I go to a shortcut and I go to his folder. He's a prospect. So I go to prospects. I look for Don Johnson right there. His name really is Don Johnson. And there's my agenda. So I select it, and that could just as easily be an email if you save the email to a folder, Ellen. And now I save it, and when it comes around for that meeting, I don't have to start hunting around for everything because right here,
I don't love this.
is my agenda. Summary of findings, and then I have links to his geodemographic assessment, other stuff, samples of the mailer, and here's the contract. I just go right down the list. So short answer is yes. With ACT you can, and I don't think ACT is a particularly robust platform. If ACT can do it, I'm sure that Salesforce can, and and a number of other contact managers out there. What do you use currently, Ellen?
I just use Comcast, and then I have my whole folder system in my Word docs and Excel docs.
Okay. Well, is there an equivalent function to this?
That's what I'm looking for, and I'm
good. I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too. I love that.
Yeah. Well, like today, here was my meeting, which we're done, so I cleared the activity, but I can unclear the activity. And that was for the only thing I put in there was the Zoom link. So I didn't have to hunt around for it, even though I know it's on our club website. And there, so this is not, I didn't attach a document, I just attached a link. I just embedded a link.
No, that's.
It works for me.
Nice. Very nice.
Anybody else?
I have a question.
Yeah, hi, John.
Yeah, hi. A lot of us, speaking of emails, a lot of us get barraged with them and they hamper our ability to keep up and keep organized. Do you or anyone have any good methodology? And even unsubscribing, that takes time. You can't unsubscribe fast enough from a lot of these things. Does anybody have any good methodology for handling that?
My methodology is I recognize there's basically three different kinds of email as far as I'm concerned. There are emails that I look forward to receiving and want to act on immediately. There are emails that I have no use for. And then there are emails that, while I'm not particularly interested in reading or responding in the moment, it's coming from a source that is of sufficient interest to me that I don't want to unsubscribe. I may delete the email, but I won't unsubscribe. And, you know, smart marketers know there's a sweet spot between too much and too little email because of this very fact. You know, I sign up to request information from somebody. If I get 3 emails that day and 2 emails the next day and then an email after that, they're gone by the second day, because that's just too much. That's an insult to me of my time. And then there are emails that I'm looking for and I respond to immediately. I can't control what other people do, you know, John, any more than you can. But what you can do is have a methodology, which is if you get an email and you begin to realize, you know what, I'm not looking at this stuff anymore, then just unsubscribe or just put them in junk, and then you don't have to worry about it. And to keep your mailbox from filling rapidly, look at an email and say, well, this is important, but it's not urgent. Well, then consider saving it someplace and then on your calendar, setting a reminder for yourself to revisit it. And you may not even need to save the email. If it just jogs your mind to say, oh, yeah, I want to shop for that new pair of running shoes, well, then what I would do is I would go into my calendar and I would search. I got to move this. You know, I would search for, I don't think I have New Balance in here, but I think I have the North Face. And I would search for the North Face. And I'd say, yeah, you know what? It's time for me to buy a new climbing rope. And where's my pro deal? There's customer service. So I go to the calendar, and I don't have time today. I don't have time this week, but how's next Friday? Oh, yeah, I got tons of time. So I go in here. It's not a meeting. It's a to-do. And I just type in shop for rope. Ring the alarm, 5 minutes. It's not urgent, so I'll keep it medium. See, I have a different color for each, for whether it's urgent or not urgent at all. So I have a color scheme also. And then I just set 5-minute reminder or whatever. And then when it becomes the 19th, that'll be on my calendar and it'll be a reminder for me.
Nice. Thanks, Danny.
Thanks for the question.
Danny, question for you. Have you checked yourself on a DISC assessment, what your letters are?
Yeah, I think I'm a high D and fairly high. I don't know if I'm an influencer. I think I am high D and fairly high I believe. But it was years ago. Not that it changes. Why? What's your point, Ilya?
I don't know. I'm sensing more like CNS, my friend. You're very task-oriented, and at the same time, you're reserved. You're making sure that you got your stuff in place, situated. Otherwise, yeah, you're right. And in your type of environment, when you're climbing it, you got to make sure you got the right gear. Otherwise, man, you're dead.
Right. But I think that goes to the point that I made at the beginning of the talk, Ilya, which is that I'm not organized by nature. You know, my cognitive ability is to be kind of creative and impulsive. And I don't really, I forced myself to learn this, and I really love it now, but it's not my nature. I just knew it was really important to acquire.
It is indeed. And to John's point, actually, and I appreciate what you showed, ACT is actually a phenomenal once you master it, but you could start maybe from Google if you have a Google account. I think Google has a nice outline, the calendar there that you could utilize it in the beginning at least to get yourself in that rehearsal of planning it stuff for yourself, and then setting up time for a reminder and utilizing that for before you get into ACT, because ACT is much more advanced. With what you just showed is amazing how you're utilizing it, and I'm still learning it. I'm still getting into that habit of using it, and it is an awesome tool, but it definitely takes a lot of information for you to digest to learn it. And I appreciate you just went and revisited this with me, and it was pretty cool stuff. Thanks, man.
Well, I'm glad you raised the point. Thank you, Ilya, because I think that's a great idea. And sometimes people call me the maestro when they see me work on here, because this is like my musical instrument. And I can fly through. I can create agendas and link them and schedule them and do the follow-up and do everything. And the danger of being a bad teacher is believing that what you do is self-evident, or that not remembering that it took years to acquire, to get where you are. So I think the idea of starting simple is great. And again, what I wanted to share today were just sort of a framework for deciding, well, what do I need to do first, and how do I get organized? And it's understanding the 4 Ds, and it's having a tool that you can make work for you. I mean, and before ACT came around, actually I used Q&A before that, but when I first started really embracing organization skills, it was when I was working before I had a computer in the 80s, and I just had a 3-ring binder where I was able to sort things that were urgent and done, urgent versus important, and block out time, and then put a line through them when you were done to get that gratification. And then when I got this tool, I had a head start because I already had the logic, the structure down. And it was a matter of just then overlaying that logic onto this tool. But yeah, your point is excellent. This is a I don't know if it's a powerful tool. I don't know how sophisticated it is, but what's nice about it is you can use it in your own way. Like, they have a task list, and a lot of people just want. I don't even use it the way they recommend. I mean, I put tasks on my calendar, and then the way I know that I have appointments is that it's the blue stuff. Like, this is an appointment, this is an appointment, this is an appointment, and this is an appointment. And then I have a webcast, which is also time sensitive, so it's an appointment. I only distinguish it with the blue. The rest of this stuff, I can tell you with 100% certainty, I will not get to all of these on Friday, the 12th of March. But, I'll go through it and I'll say, well, that can wait, so I throw that into another day. Okay? But there's a task list. So if all you wanted to do, I do this because I know that I never schedule more than 6 hours of things that have to be done in any given day, because I know in any given day, I'm going to do at least 2 hours of stuff that I hadn't planned to do. So I never book 8 hours solid, or I'll kill myself. And I'll kill other people too, because I'm depending on other people. So, you may want to use the task list, and then you can just go down the list here and see what needs to be done. I have really high resolution, which is why you can't see what it is. But I mean, these are the things that I've got scheduled out. But, if I didn't have this tool, imagine me trying to keep track in my head or on a legal pad with a couple of hundred of tasks like this. Well, I don't have to waste brain cells on that because I know it's here. And I go to sleep very confident knowing that very little stuff is going to fall through the cracks. Can I answer anything else? If not, I want to thank you. It was great having an engaged audience, and I appreciate it. My door is open. Jot down my number, my email address, and reach out anytime.
Thanks, Danny.
Thanks, Danny.
Yeah, well done,
Well
Danny.
done.
Thank you all.
Marlena, maybe we'll stop recording here. And Danny, would you be able to give control back to Marlena as one of the co-hosts? And then Marlena, we can restart the recording. I know Linda
I can
was
try.
interested in getting a copy of the recording, so I think we'll stop here.
I just stopped.
Restart.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you hear me, Mark? Yeah, I just stopped sharing, and I was